Welcome to the newest phase of By the Numbers. Now, this program is designed to help you, the viewer, better understand the budget process on various levels. We more so will focus in this series on municipal budgets, the intricacies of municipal budgets, and the departments that are funded by the overall budget. Now, the mission of the particular show is to sit down and talk with the local stakeholders and get their insight on the town's financial picture and what's being done moving forward. Now today, to gain some perspective, back once more, he is a gentleman who's done a lot of volunteer work in the town of Hanson and in Whitman. He currently serves as the chairman of the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. We have Mr. Bob Hayes joining us, sir.
Hi, Kev. How are you?
Battle.
Thanks for having me. Battle's going good. It's, the summer heat battle now.
So we get another school year in the books, in the rearview mirror. So what was 2018-2019 like for the school committee?
2018-2019 was a challenging year, as the last several years have been very challenging with budgets. Budgets are a difficult thing, statewide and locally, and there are changes in both towns looking at moving forward for 2019-2020. There are some changes they're making, and they're being very, very close about it, of how they're going to do it. They're taking some painstaking moves, which is a good thing. I mean, both of these towns are pretty well run. We've just got to put our ducks in a row and sum it up for the people.
What typically happens during the summer months prior to the start of school? And is it typical this year, or has there been a kind of change in what the school committee is doing, or what the school district is doing to get ready for the new school year?
Well, as you probably have heard, there's a bunch of different committees being formed. Not a tremendous amount of difference from other years. I mean, the school district does deep cleaning and a lot of maintenance work to the buildings during the summer months. Stuff that can't be done when the students are in there. Projects that have been planned and set forward. So a ton of that's been going on. And we have been meeting. We're going to be meeting again soon. And every year we discuss budget, and we discuss it earlier and earlier every year, trying to come up with a different type of a formula to maybe get it out there so everybody can see it.
So as we're sitting here and taping this conversation, the state is trying to work out the final details for the FY 2020 budget. And the new fiscal year, as you and I already know, is underway. Is this going to delay anything that the school district or any of the school districts around the Commonwealth do?
The school districts in the Commonwealth have a difficult picture when every year the governor seems to push the budget forward further, giving less of a snapshot where schools are going to be with their funding. It used to be that the budget was set in February for the next year, obviously, and we would be moving forward with that, knowing a little bit better where our picture was. But as the can gets kicked down the road and the budget gets moved forward a little bit more every year, it gets a little more difficult for a school district to figure it out. But as you know, school opens in September or August, some districts, and closes in June, and that happens every year. So school districts get through it, but as money has tightened up and the state's looking for revenue in several different areas. I mean, one of the things you probably saw recently was Encore opened up in Everett. And the state said in less than a week, there was $5 million more state revenue to the state. So if that happens weekly, look at what yearly that could potentially mean for the state. And as the state gets more revenue, usually it trickles down and they put some into education.
Let's kind of look back a little bit, if we can, to the Springtown meetings. We know that while we didn't hear a lot of conversation from the town of Hanson, there were a lot of things going on in regards to Whitman trying to figure out its finances. What was it like to finally get both communities to lock down and vote on their assessments to the schools for the next fiscal year?
typical, both towns struggle in different years, and it changes back and forth which town it may be. Every year it gets more difficult because the picture tightens up more. The funding sources have dried up in some of the things that the state does. So they rely more on the towns to have more skin in the game, so to speak. And it gets more difficult because all town services are affected, whether it's police, fire, DPW. Every service is affected, and all of the budgets increase every year. They have contractual obligations to meet up with, whether it's town or whether it's a school district. We all know insurance has been increasing, and everyone has an insurance plan, so that increases for both towns. So it's difficult for both towns. This isn't an easy thing. A lot of people think, wow, you just get in there, it is what it is. It's not. It's a difficult process when revenue doesn't increase, but you have increases on the other side with the employees and with all the departments. I mean, used to be you could buy a police cruiser for $15,000. I'm guessing they're probably $40,000 in today's money, maybe even more. Same way as a fire truck. Or the school district has tons of equipment that we use to keep up the buildings, and on and on and on. And it all comes at an increase.
What is being done on the school side of things? I think that the one thing that is toughest for a school department is when it comes to getting out information. The people who are in the know easily understand and able to distribute it to the folks in their department. But the folks who are at home, the folks who get their quarterly quarterly and annual bills from the town for taxes, don't necessarily understand. A lot of times they'll go to their neighbor for comprehension, and something can get lost in translation. What is the school district? What are the town departments trying to do to get the word out about what happens during the process, other than shows like this?
Well, I think the towns are getting more and more proactive. Shows like this definitely help. Kevin, as you know, we've both run plenty of shows on many different subjects to try and get some information out to the town. But I think the big part of it is that social media sometimes takes over. And part of the issue with social media is it's kind of like a campfire story. It starts out this way, and by the time you scroll down to the end of the page, it's 180 degrees the other way. It always isn't quite as correct, and some people take that as gospel. They hear it, they see it, and they take bits and pieces. I think if you want to be a proactive citizen and really know what's going on in the towns, know what's going on in the school district, come to school committee meetings. They're open. You don't have to get up and speak. If you're a little bit shy, you don't have to get up and speak, but if you want to, you can get up and ask questions. It's a 100% open meeting. And I recommend the same thing at selectmen's meetings. They're wide open. They encourage people to come. The same thing for FinCom, the finance committee meetings. Those meetings are wide open. You can go in, ask questions, there's no issues. The people you're dealing with are just citizens like you and me. Mm-hmm. Nobody gets mad. You ask questions, and you get a better snapshot of what's going on. And we realize people are busy. In today's world, you're raising children. I know I raised a couple. You get busy between sports and between their activities and all of the above. But part of it is town meeting. Both towns struggle to get a quorum every single year. I mean, I think Hanson's got 6,000 or 7,000 registered voters, and I believe Whitman's got close to 10 now.
Yep.
And we struggle to get 150 people at a town meeting. Struggle. So you've really got 150 people, or 125 in some towns, and some towns have a quorum of 100, running the whole budget of the town. And that becomes difficult because after it's all voted, social media takes over and people start going, why'd they do this? You got to come and get involved. Mm-hmm. And getting involved doesn't mean taking a voluntary position. It means just come and listen. I'll listen to some of these shows, but social media sometimes gets a little twisted around, and like I said, it's kind of like a campfire story by the end of the night.
Can I ask you kind of an off-topic question? You talked about people getting people involved. Do you think if the communities, although I know when they went with electronic voting in the town of Whitman, there were a lot of concerns of people outside entities being able to have some kind of a cause and effect and being able to sway votes via somebody be out in their vehicle and be able to change votes.
You mean electronically?
Electronically.
Like hacking it?
Like hacking, exactly. And so my question to you would be, what if we did something like, my missus, she from time to time, she likes shopping, whether it's on the internet, and then if you see HSN, nowadays with your home remote, you actually can purchase things with your remote. What if we had something like that in order to get more people involved? Do you think that the public is trusting of a system like that to be able to have folks vote, or do you think it's too early for something like that?
Kevin, I think it brings up an interesting perspective on that subject. I think you would have to make it so it's foolproof, so it couldn't be hacked. Because, see, part of the only problem I see with that is it's registered voters that are supposed to be voting. And in the electorate, how do you know if it's a registered voter that's voting? It would have to have some of a fail-safe system. As we know, if you recap any of the presidential elections, out of the country, things were going on and all kinds of stuff was happening. People might say that that's happening locally. So I think it'd have to be foolproof, but I think it's worth looking into, because anything to get more people involved, and obviously it needs to change. The current system may have worked for many, many years, but being 2019, it might be time to change how town meeting works. And that's a pretty good idea.
Okay. Looking at the assessments, was what was voted at both town meetings satisfactory enough where the school district did not incur any deep cuts or have to make some significant changes in order to be able to provide a quality education for 2019-2020?
Well, every year is challenging, and as the school district moves forward on the assessments, we lost some positions, and there was also some restructuring of positions to change how things are operated. Different people were taking on more job and eliminating certain positions. So I think that needs to be looked at every year, because you need to be as responsible as you possibly can. There's only so many dollars and cents going around.
Okay. So the town of Whitman actually has formed a new group that's going to be meeting shortly called the Budget Override Evaluation Committee. And I believe that Jeff Simonak, the school superintendent, he's going to be on it. And your newest committee member, Don Byers, will also be serving on that committee. What are you expecting to come from this group?
Well, I think they're going to take a look at short-term, long-term, what an override might provide for the town of Whitman in short-term, what it might provide in long-term. It's going to give some citizens at large an opportunity to participate in it. There's going to be a couple of members from the Board of Selectmen. There's going to be a couple of members from citizens at large. And anytime you have people that are participating, they see the inner workings and they can help spread the word. I mean, lots of people think that, and I'm trying to be as easy as I can, that they know everything about everything because they read it on social media and then they jump to conclusions. But when they really see the figures, the actual figures, then they get a snapshot of what's going on. It's not a think thing, it's the real thing, because numbers don't lie. The numbers are the numbers.
As you've mentioned it twice during our conversation here, as somebody who is elected, somebody who serves the public, and you don't just serve the public just on that one committee. You are one of the ultimate volunteers. No, but you're one of a few who really go out there and volunteer on a lot of committees. You're a community guy. When you see repeatedly things, how do you feel that social media is having an adverse effect when it comes to trying to get things done in a community? Now, I know that it can be very positive and that it can help in many ways, but I think there's also problems with it, as you said, where some people will take it as gospel because they saw it on social media, it must be true.
Well, I think, again, to hit both sides of that coin as you just did, the great part is it gives a lot of people information that they wouldn't have. The downside is sometimes it lessens your volunteer groups. Like if you look in both towns, the selectmen are looking for people to fill positions. A lot of people don't come forward because they get criticized. They see the criticism on social media by AKA the keyboard warriors, and they see it And then they go, wait a minute, I'm going to do a volunteer position
For no money.
for no money, and I'm going to get criticized for it when I'm just trying to help. So I think in that aspect of it, it scares some people away. They go, I'm not going to get involved. I'd like to, but they don't want, and I don't blame them. It's a tough thing because no matter what you do, it's whether you vote right or left, or yes or no, there's going to be criticism. I mean, it's just, there's no perfect solution, Kevin. When you're spending dollars of the taxpayers' dollars, there are no perfect solutions. But we all know people want services. It's what has basically changed. Service demand has gone up much greater. I mean, look at Whitman and Hanson. They both have 2 or 3 ambulances because the service end of it has gone up. When you start adding more things going on in the aging of some of its residents, it demands more service. Fire protection demands more than it ever did. I mean, the world has changed. And I'm not saying it's for the better or for the worse. I'm just saying it's changed in the services demand. I know the business I'm in. You have to look at a customer base. Look at the restaurant business, how that has changed. Just what people eat. You and me, just what we eat. It's changed. We've changed our habits. So if you don't change and reinvent yourself, and both towns are trying to do that, and I applaud them for trying to do that because they see that there is a need to change, but municipalities don't move quite as quickly as the private sector. And there's a lot of reasons for it.
So digressing back to the Budget Override Evaluation Committee, I know one of the things that they're looking at is to be able to kind of take a look at the town's finances, what's going on with it. And my understanding is that they want to make sure that whatever they do, I know in a part of this equation is possibly an override, and this is to help as to reset the town's finances for a number of years. How important is that to being able to provide a quality education and knowing that you at least have one of your communities that's looking to get input, because it's why you have 2 members who are on, you have a member and you have your superintendent on there, making sure that they can find those funds?
I think it's always important to look at funding and see what the challenges are and how to solve that problem. Because as we know, we said it before, there's only so many dollars to go around, and services cost more and more every single year. The cost goes up because the cost of everything goes up. Again, talking about health insurance, it's skyrocketing. And there needs to be some sort of a stopgap measure. And Whitman's trying to do that because they fell into, they had a little financial blip on the map. And so they're being proactive. And being proactive is a good thing. It's looking at stuff. It's really, really, really opening up the box and looking at, are there new ways to do it? Because as we just said, communities are changing. Services demand is going up. And when service demand goes up, the cost goes up. I mean, we have more students with more services than ever. But yet the student population is decreasing. But the service end of it is getting larger.
Yeah, and what's interesting, we were sitting here talking about Whitman, but probably the one thing that Whitman has had is as a constant is in town government, and that is its town administrator, who is a liaison to town departments and to the Board of Selectmen, chief governing board in both in that town. You've had a constant at town administrator, Frank Lynham, yet Hanson right now is searching for a new town administrator. How important is it to have continuity when it comes to one community, but whomever they hire in Hanson, somebody who kind of gets it when it comes to budgets and funding for education?
Town administrators are very important. Their job, obviously, continuity is a good thing, and it can be a bad thing. Also, I mean, it's like voting yes or no. But continuity, when you have a good person in place, is a good thing, and I think Frank is the continuity. He's been there. He's done a good job. He's been there for a long time. Hanson's had some town administrators come and go, and that happens. Because the shelf life of a town administrator
3 to 5 years.
Isn't a long time. They tend to bounce around.
But you've been on the school committee for how long? 12
16 years.
Okay, 16. So you've seen multiple town. What is that like, having to kind of get someone acclimated to what's going on with the districts, what's going on with the district, and it seems like by the time they kind of get the grasp and they kind of hit their stride, there's a change that happens.
Well, Kevin, town administrators usually you don't hire the guy who's on the job for the first day. They usually come from another town.
Right.
Now, a lot of single town administrators, and by single I mean they don't have a regional school district, so they have to do business with another town, take a little bit of time learning what that means and the different measures that are taken. But when you have somebody come in that's already been in the regional school district, even though they may operate a little bit different in how they do it, they still have that basic grasp of what a town administrator is supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. And it's not the worst thing in the world, but they come in like they've usually worked in other towns. It's pretty rare. I'll put it to you this way, not that I can remember, I've never seen a town administrator first day on the job was never a town administrator anywhere else. They usually come in with
It's not
with
somebody
experience.
who's green when it comes to experience.
Right. They usually have experience. And how do you get experience? Sometimes you become an assistant town administrator, work your way up through the ranks, get this knowledge, and then become an administrator. But I don't recall in the town of Hanson, I could be wrong, I'll be corrected on social media if I was.
Yeah, once we post the video, you'll definitely be corrected.
But I don't think that they ever hired a man or a woman that wasn't at least a town administrator or an assistant.
Okay. One of the things that's been bandied about here in the town of Whitman is a long-term, a strategic plan, a 5-year plan. How important is it that both Whitman and Hanson utilize such information, and how does it help the school district when it comes to planning your budgets and the assessments that you put forth annually?
Putting forth a 5-year plan is a very, very difficult thing to do.
Why?
Well, it takes a tremendous amount. First of all, when you start it, you can put it out there, but then you have things that change as the road comes down into year 2, year 3, because you have capital improvements that all of a sudden something else breaks, and that gets shoved aside, and we have to put an emergency plan in to fix what happens. Whether it be a roof or a boiler, the town owns multiple buildings and miles and miles and miles of road, and they have tons of equipment. So, and they have service people. And by service people, I'm talking about police, fire, schools, DPWs, senior centers, libraries, and things happen. So you do need some sort of a plan moving forward. And this is what Whitman's working at with this budget override committee. They're looking to get a full-time plan, I'm pretty sure. And so Hanson's been working on it for years too. But it becomes very difficult because keep in mind when you plan it and then you go to fund it, you go to town meeting and 150 people vote on it and half your plan goes out the window, what happens then?
Yeah, you're back to the drawing board.
You're back to the drawing board. So, or the state cuts back a certain funding because they had a bad revenue problem. Now, your 5-year plan, part of it, is out the window because you don't have funding. Because every plan, whether it's plan your work your plan your work your plan, the dollar amount comes into play on every single time. Every time. Whether it's a big dollar item or a small dollar item, sometimes they get pushed off. With nobody's fault. Everybody tends to blame everyone. It's no one's fault. It just happens. They're called emergencies. You can't plan on every single thing that can happen when you have miles and miles of roads and buildings and oil burners and gas burners and equipment. It breaks.
We're winding down. We got approximately about 5 minutes left here in the program. The one thing that I've been hearing around the Commonwealth, especially from urban centers, is the push for a revamp of the ed reform of 1993. And the thought is that it isn't just going to necessarily help the urban centers, but that the suburban school districts are also going to benefit. Do you think that's the case? Will the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District benefit from any ed reform package or legislation that's passed?
Well, Kevin, I haven't seen any true ed reform package yet, but I would love to make sure that Whitman-Hanson obviously gets some sort of aid out of it. And I think that the Commonwealth is looking at it to see that funding of education may be an old school way of doing things the way they're doing it since 1993. Again, it's 2019. Services have changed. The services you had in 93 don't look anything like the services you have in 2019. Sure. Just for the baby boomers, what's going on? This generation, whether you want to call them the millennium or whatever.
I think it might be Generation Z.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. In my generations, there was 5 and 6 kids in families. Now there's 1 and 2 or 0. That's why population in school districts is getting less, because they're not having these giant families anymore. So again, the service industry part of it has changed. It really has changed. And it's more demanding than ever.
Now, I know the one item that we kept hearing over and over is about unfunded mandates. Are you expecting any changes in that area? Because the one little rumor that's percolating is full-time daycare, a full-day daycare.
Full-day kindergarten.
Kindergarten, yes, kindergarten. Thank you.
Full-day daycare. That's what that's what I always hear. You guys want all-day K as a daycare. It's not a daycare center. It's a proven fact. If you have all-day kindergarten, kids get a leg up that do it. It's just the earlier you can educate them. It's kind of like sports. It used to be 3rd and 4th grade. Now they figured out, wait a minute, get them going in 1st grade, get them going in kindergarten. They're getting a leg up. Well, it's a proven fact they do. As well as the unfunded mandates, it's what hurts every single school district in the Commonwealth. The state mandates by law that we do things, but then they don't send any funding to do them. So again, it puts more of a service industry and a cost on the local municipalities. When you put that cost out there, the local municipalities have to go up in taxes. And there's no appetite for a lot of people to spend any more tax money for these services. So the frustrating part is people will say, it's not fair. I say, in fact, you've probably heard me say it hundreds of times, unfunded mandates is what is killing school districts, and not just Whitman, Hanson. All the way around the borders of the state, these unfunded mandates, whether it's busing, transportation of other kinds, they make all these mandates, but they don't fund them. It's tough. It's hard on districts.
We're less than 2 minutes. Anything I haven't asked you during this conversation, but you feel you need to say?
Well, Kevin, I think that it's very important to engage, have the people get involved. Get engaged, come to the meetings, ask these important questions. Don't be bashful. And please, ladies and gentlemen, should you be viewing this show, volunteer. Be a volunteer in your town. Don't be afraid of the criticism. It's always going to be there. I think that that's important for people to get engaged, stay engaged, find out what's going on, and help be part of the solution.
I almost gave out Bob's phone number, because normally at the end of his program that he does here is he gives out his phone number and his email address. What I'm going to do is just tell you he's 100% correct. And if you want to get involved, there are necessary ways to be able to do that. If you check out your town website, you can do that. If you want to get involved in these conversations that we're having here on By the Numbers, info@WHCA.tv. You have suggested guests, questions that we should ask, topics that we should cover. Feel free, info@WHCA.tv. And until our next conversation, have a good day.